What's up, good people? Welcome. Garrett here, Craig here. No Jamie today, but pretty easy win today for the Chargers. Cruising on 27-10. Browns kind of get a nice play on a garbage time touchdown, but kind of running up that score a little bit at the end just to pad the stats. But Chargers win 27-10. It was a big day all the way around. It felt like a team win today. Chargers on special teams do pretty good, getting a big return from Darius Davis, get a block kick. I'm sure we'll talk about Dicker in a little bit. Outside of that, defense, 3 turnovers, 6 sacks, I think, on the team. And then on offense, you've got multiple rushing touchdowns, 2 big splash play touchdowns to Quentin Johnson and Joshua Palmer. Pretty nice overall victory today, a team win.
Yeah, absolutely. From top to bottom. Of course, it was not perfect, specifically the second half offense. I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit, but it's hard to walk away from this not feeling super confident when you watch the team just kind of make some adjustments here and there to basically get the offense going. Defense held its own all day long. So it's basically maneuvering around an offense that has a tendency to sputter, but just watching that defense be effective every week, still being the top scoring defense in the entire NFL, even after today. And yeah, that garbage time touchdown, who really cares? But I'm sure that they wanted to keep it a touchdownless game. They showed themselves to be fighting basically all the way to the end, and it was a great catch. I think it was a catch. It looked like it might have been a drop, but overall, at the end of the day, you got a pretty complete game when you look at it from a statistical standpoint.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those adjustments. So the game, it felt like, we got some broken touchdowns from Joshua Palmer and Quentin Johnston. Both Browns DBs thought they had safety help over the top on both plays. It doesn't just happen once, it happens twice.
Yeah.
And Joshua Palmer's open over the top, and so is Quentin Johnston. But offensively, and I think we can get to the second half in a little bit, but for me, which really felt like it took into effect towards the second half, was early in that game, Myles Garrett was a freak, as you say. Garrett is a freak, as Craig
Hashtag
said.
Garrett is a freak. Get it trending.
As he said on the round table. But Myles Garrett gets 2 sacks in one drive, both on Rashawn Slater. And we're going, oh no, Slater had his worst game of his career going against Myles Garrett in the past. Now he's wrecking shop in the first half. Then he flips the other side, gets a sack on Joe Alt. But after those couple drives, Myles Garrett, for the most part, got shut down pretty quickly. We saw a lot more help on the outside. We saw some really good quick timing throws. I know it didn't really work in terms of they weren't moving the ball a lot in the second half, but they're getting the ball out of Herbert's hands a lot faster, and the rotation helped in that second half. On both those last 2 sacks, the last one on Slater and the one on Alt, the one against Slater, Zion Johnson was supposed to rotate over and help out on Slater, got there too late. Myles cut in and got the sack. On Joe Alt, same thing, but opposite side. Trey Pipkins is supposed to swing over. He got there too late. Myles Garrett gets by Alt, and it gets by Pipkins because he's there too late, and then they get the sack. But it felt like 2.5 quarters to end that game. Myles Garrett was very, very, very quiet, where he was an absolute game wrecker to start that game. So the adjustment, in my mind, after halftime of making sure anybody else can hurt you on this defense, but Myles Garrett can't be a one-man wrecking crew anymore. And for the most part, they did a really, really nice job of containing him.
Yeah, overall, kind of an up and down day from the offensive line when they give up 6 sacks in the first half, which is ridiculous when you consider the fact that Herbert is not fully recovered from that high ankle sprain. Much better than he was, but it makes you really curious about why they insist on 5 and 7 step drops so consistently when the interior of the offensive line is so bad. I really want him to get a bit better about that internal clock when you understand that you're playing from a bit of a disadvantage with that interior offensive line. And when that first and second read isn't there, you got to look for some space to take off, or at least look to get out of the pocket and get rid of the ball. Don't take those sacks, because he takes the worst sacks. He gets bent up like a pretzel. It looks like at any given time, something could snap one-way trip to Snap City. But overall, I think they did a really good job with neutralizing Garrett there into the second half. Like you mentioned before, you saw some chips, some double teams, because dude was like an equal opportunity butt kicker in the first half. It didn't matter what side he was lining up on. And I mentioned this in the chat in the Discord. Guys, remember like NBA Jam when someone got on fire and there was literally nothing you could do about it? That's
Yep.
the game Myles Garrett was having in the first half. And I thought he was going to wreck us well into the game, but you saw the offensive adjustments. And kudos to Greg Roman for helping to establish better protection for Herbert there. And then you saw as the game went on, even though the running game wasn't super consistent throughout, they were able to lean on it late, get some scores there. You saw J.K. Dobbins kind of make more of a resurgence into the game in the second half, but that's what they want to do. They want to be able to lean on teams late in the games and salt games away. So, yeah, kind of an uneven game, but we'll take any win we can get it. And yeah, you can see where they need improvement on the offense. And now you're going into a week where you have the trade deadline coming up on Tuesday. You're 5-3. And if you feel confident about the direction you're going in, you probably shouldn't sit on your hands when you know exactly what your deficiencies are, where your deficiencies lie, should I say.
Yeah, we kind of talked about how it felt like the Chargers may not be completely all in on making a move. They're making a lot of calls, and it felt like I kind of made the comment about how, like, Deontay Johnson felt like a move where they were in on Johnson, and the Ravens get him for a pick swap, and it felt like if you were really serious, you could have easily, matched that, if not come up with something a little bit better than that to get Deontay. So I didn't know how serious they were. Reports are out that they're basically like window shopping at this point, where they're happy with their roster. But when you look at being 5-3, you play Tennessee, and then they even showed it on the broadcast. There's a big sled from here on out with Cincinnati and Baltimore and the Chiefs, I think, coming up. There's a 4 or 5 game stretch, and then you get the Buccaneers on the end of that. There's a stretch there where we're going to really see like how good this team is. The defense has been great, but we're about to see them going up against much better offenses. And if you really want to make that run and kind of push yourself and propel yourself, this is where they have to make the move, because at this point, DJ Chark, while he makes the offense a little bit better, if you were to go and take a swing towards an Njoku or an Evan Ingram, which are two guys they have expressed interest in, or if you somehow were able to find some kind of veteran depth on the interior of the offensive line, if you're really thinking about making a move, you're going to have to do it, because if not, standing pat, I don't know that you're really serious about making that push this season. Maybe they're waiting until year 2 or 3 of Harbaugh, but yeah, the trade deadline, it feels like if they're really serious about making a push to the playoffs right now and competing with the Chiefs and the Bills and everybody else up top, they got to make some kind of move Tuesday.
Before they leave that stadium, they need to get a deal in place for Dayton Njoku, so he can just catch the plane back with them.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, just get it done. I mean, you're not going anywhere for the rest of the season. I think they were under the impression they might be able to catch lightning in a bottle and go on a bit of a run with Jameis Winston this week. But to be completely honest with you, when you think back to that performance against the Ravens, they had at least 2 to 3 opportunities to swing that game back in their favor. And apparently safety just don't want to pick off Jameis, because Derwin had a situation where he was playing hot potato with the ball this week. Just
hit
like
him right
what
in the
happened.
tummy.
Yeah. Worst place. Where's Jamie when you need him?
I know.
But yeah, so you see that last week, Kyle Hamilton had like the exact same scenario. So Jameis's game wasn't as great as you think it was when you go back and watch it last week. And also, I don't think they were necessarily prepared to play Winston. So, I mean, again, he ended up being the starter for the Ravens without any real planning associated with it long term. So, again, he got in there, was hyped up, team played behind him, and they got a win that no one really expected them to. And they came crashing back down to earth this week. And it also kind of makes you wonder a bit about that matchup down the line against the Ravens, because they've had some really weird games this year that you felt like they ought to be able to dominate that they haven't yet. So, I know a lot of people were probably looking at that game as like a definite loss for the Chargers, but now I'm not so certain.
Yeah. I don't think the Ravens are another team like the Bengals, even though the Bengals I think they ended up winning that game, or they were on their way to winning it pretty handily against the Raiders today. But Bengals haven't really started to figure it out, but today they seem like they did pretty good. Baltimore, they both play in AFC West teams, by the way. Baltimore won 41-10 today against Denver. I mean, they put it to them. So it feels like those two teams, it's just a week, but they might start putting it together here because they always seem to put it on late in the season. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how that works out. But it does feel like if they do feel like they can compete with the Bengals, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bills, and everybody else up there, that they're gonna have to make a move because this roster is not good enough to compete with those guys in a playoff scenario.
No. And right now, as well as your defense is playing, you can't expect it to perform to this level for the remainder of the season against some of the opposition you're going to be up against. So you got a couple options here. They probably do need to do something defensively, as well as those young guys in the secondary are playing. Again, have to mention this. If either one of them, either Tariq Still or Cam goes down, you're in a world of trouble. Eli Apple got on the field a little today, and you almost didn't notice that he was there. So great on him. But I don't want to keep leaving it up to guys that haven't played a bunch within the system. I will say, though, I know that we talked a little bit about a name, or you put out on announcements, a name that popped up on the interior that I think would be really awesome, and it helps you in your secondary because it establishes a little bit more pressure and will help on your interior against the run and as a pass rush. If you want to mention that, you can go ahead. But overall, I just think, yeah. So
you're talking about a guy they're interested in?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So overall, I just think that in general, they can't sit on their hands here at the deadline. They definitely need help on offense, specifically at tight end. That's always been a direction I've pushed for, and I hope they do it. But they probably need to look at some defensive help as well, because they're about 1 or 2 injuries away from having a very legitimate problem.
Yeah, so the name that he's talking about is Jeffrey Simmons, is a guy they called on.
Sorry, folks. I like suspense.
I wish it was Sexy Dexy chat. I wish, but no, it was not. And they don't believe that the Giants would give up Dexter Lawrence either. Though Dalvin Tomlinson looked pretty good today. If we're talking about interior guys,
it was against our interior offense.
All right, fine.
So the bar's pretty low.
Yeah, it is. But so as we're kind of talking around the game. I know we're talking about the trade deadline because we're all pretty excited about that. But I mean, it feels like we gotta off the top talk about you mentioned rookies, but the game that Tarheeb still had today. I mean, he was active in the run game, which is kind of going underrated, but we saw he didn't bite on the inside route, followed, and I think it was Cedric Tillman or maybe Jerry Jeudy to the corner, tipped the ball to Elijah Molden, got that interception. And then on the second one, they were the wide receiver, and I think it was Jeudy. No, it was Tillman.
It was Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
On the pick?
No. I'm talking about this second interception. It was Tillman who was going to cut back inside and still made sure that he kept him to the boundary, shaded him. And so once Tillman couldn't cut inside, it landed right in Gilman's lap. Well, he had to dive for it, but got the second interception. And then the third one, he just ran right inside and got the interception, ran the route for him. It was a crazy good day for Elijah Molden, or for Tarheeb Still, but also to get the redemption for Elijah Molden, who had 2 called back last week where he should have had some. Tarheeb Still was absolutely stellar today.
Let's be honest here. For all the people that have been throwing shade at our front office for not having made any moves recently leading up to the trade deadline, think about some of the names that were lesser lauded, like an Elijah Molden, who is almost always around the ball. He just seems to make plays every single week. Tyre Tart. You have guys that have been moved to the team that, again, were kind of cast-offs from elsewhere that are impact players on this defense. So it's not like the front office hasn't done anything. It's not like Joe Ortiz has completely just stepped away from making moves. He's made more trades and collected more guys here in just this one offseason and early into the year than I can remember Tom Telesco ever making. So be patient. They know the team needs improvement. I'm sure something will get done. It may not be everything that we want it to be, but they know where they're deficient, and I'm sure that they're going to make sure that it happens. Now, Tarheeb Still, I always assumed that he was going to take over that slot spot from Jasir Taylor, but just due to injuries and attrition, he's had to play a position that's not natural to him. Like in Maryland, he played some outside, but that was the weaker part of his game. He was always meant to be like a slot guy. But to see him kick outside and perform the way that he's doing, and then also play a little bit in the slot, like that break that he made on that in cut by Elijah Moore and man-to-man coverage was ridiculous. He wasn't afraid of being beat vertically because he knew where his help was, and he knew that in that coverage he can play his man and make a play on the ball. At the very least, he'd get a stop right after the reception or just a chance at a PBU. But the way he drove on that ball, he watched Winston's eyes that entire play, knew that he locked in on Moore, and broke on the ball and made a tremendous interception. He was everywhere all day. This is a 5th round pick. Okay, so again, for everyone that's, I don't know why they hate on the Joe Ortiz thing. I guess it's because he's not done anything big here in the weeks leading up to the trade deadline. Just look at these moves, the 5th round draft picks, the early trades, the guys that he picked up in free agency. All of it's making a difference. So caught up in the instant gratification, we're forgetting about what's happened prior, and it's paying full dividends right now, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, we just saw it pay dividends today. They traded for Elijah Molden, and look at him. He got an interception today. So yeah, it's great. And then we're not going to count Taylor Heineke jumping Easton Stick. I mean, that to me,
yeah, that's an MVP move in itself.
It is. So let me ask you, because I asked the chat and I asked Twitter, but I'm curious your take on this. So we've seen Cam Hart, Tarheeb Still basically ball out for weeks now in the absence of Zont. Once Asante Samuel Jr. gets healthy, does he return with a job, and or is Jaseer Taylor going to see the field again? So part A, does Zont have a job when he gets back?
I don't think that's clear. I don't necessarily know that you can remove either of these guys from the field. Like, again, let's keep in mind, if we're moving Tarheeb back to his natural position and he just kicks back down the slot, which opens up a spot for Zont. So I guess by nature of that, then he probably does get an opportunity to play again. Jaseer.
So if Fulton's back.
Oh, I'm not thinking about Fulton. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about Fulton, just AJ.
Right.
So we're talking about a full slate of all the guys coming back. Then it kind of leaves Zont as the odd man out. Because if you think about it this way, the type of cornerbacks that they're looking for on the outside have to be guys that tackle. And what would you consider Zont's weak point to be? It's definitely not his strong suit. So you got Cam out there who's looking to level anyone in the area, and he's making a big hit every single game. He's teeing somebody up and laying them out. And that's the type of mentality that they want to have with their outside corners. And Zont doesn't offer you that. He's also not a great guy in the slot because you have to be able to tackle in that position. Although he has the body type and the skill set for slot, he's not great in run support. So he could find himself being an odd man out and being depth. But if everyone's back and healthy, you're considering, if he walks, signs a decent deal next year, getting comp picks, but he could actually be worth something on the trade market. So, I mean, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. I wouldn't be surprised if they float him. Again, it just depends on how confident you feel on everything behind it on the roster. Again, Eli Apple's in the fold now. If they have any confidence in him whatsoever, former first-round pick, then yeah, you could find yourself in a position where you just have better depth, or Zont could find himself being expendable. So I don't necessarily believe he has an automatic starting role when he comes back if Christian Fulton is also healthy as well.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think you tend to believe that Asante, I mean, obviously it's different when there's, actual people involved and feelings and all that other stuff. But if you're just looking at it on paper, it feels like, look, Asante Samuel Jr. is not long for this roster. Yes, you can keep him as depth, which I think is probably a good move, especially if you're thinking about making a playoff push here. I don't know that you want to be sellers at that point. I understand that Asante Samuel is not a starter right now, but if one of those rookies gets hurt, then you're down to Eli Apple. So having good depth at corner is not a bad thing at all. And knowing that at the very end of the year, you're going to get a comp pick. I mean, look what they've been able to do with a day 3 pick with these two corners now. So you can trust in this regime to at least produce some kind of return with those late round picks and those comp picks. So it makes sense to hold on to them and then get that comp pick later. I get trading them and hope, trying to get something better for that. But I think logically you probably just hold on to them for depth, and then you just kind of let, the pieces fall as they may. And if an injury happens, or have Zont on special teams at times, or whatever you got to do. It just feels like once he comes back, they're going to have a really hard decision. While I know, he was the CB2 coming out of camp, At this point now, with the way this defense is playing, I don't know that you can really hand him back that spot, especially after the kind of hiccups he had in the first couple of games with the missed tackling and everything.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all with regard to depth because if you have a strength, then you want to continue to strengthen it. And again, they've been playing with guys that weren't necessarily meant to be contributors this early into the season. I do think that long term, there was a plan for both Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart to be regular contributors, probably earlier with Still than Hart, but it's just worked out. And again, player development and great coaching has got them to where they are. Zion unfortunately finds himself in a scenario where you can actually lose your spot to injury. It sucks to say it, but it's a thing. If the guy behind you steps up and plays and has been consistent, you can't ignore that. You can't just go ahead and screw with the groove because you got an earlier round pick in front of them and someone that's expected to produce. You have to go with what's working. And it's just, again, really unfortunate that Zion finds himself in a situation where, there may not be an available spot for him to come back in and be an immediate contributor. But if all else fails, you can play it safe, hold on to him. He becomes a comp pick at the end of the year when he walks and signs a better deal elsewhere. And then you've pretty much got your cornerback position, I would say, essentially locked up for the remainder of the year if everyone stays healthy. And it also gives you some opportunities to roll out some different types of defenses. I don't think that he's going to be a slot guy. I just don't foresee it. Like, they tried him out there and there are some lapses in tackling, but it happens wherever you place him on the field. He has great ball skills. He can be a playmaker, but he's also a liability on the outside because he takes too many chances and he doesn't tackle well. So overall, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. And what is he off of IR after this week, or does he have one more week left? I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I'm not sure.
Okay. I think this might have been game 4. If not, it's next week. So, yeah, tough decisions to make, but good problem to have.
Mm-hmm. So, getting back to the game, and we got a lot to get to. Since we're talking about defense, I love today. There was a real focal point today on defense from Jesse Minter to have a wide pass rushing attack on the edges. It really helped kind of enclose Winston for the most part, like kind of wall him off. We saw Mack and Thule and Dupree and Bosa, rather than running the hoop like normal, they're lined up at the 7 to 9 tech, and then they just ran that line to the quarterback. They got 5 sacks today. It obviously worked. They had 2 from Fox, 1 from Mack, 2.5 from Thule, and I think half a sack from Cam Hart. So they were able to get after the quarterback, which has been a big issue this entire season. And I know the Browns' offensive line is kind of in flux, and they're doing some transition right now on the offensive line, but it just felt like if they're getting to the quarterback like they were today, this defense now feels like it's just starting to unlock a new kind of level to it, because they were never able to get to the quarterback. Now they're getting more turnovers because they're getting to the quarterback. I get Winston was kind of patting the ball a little bit too much, was kind of felt really indecisive today, but it was the mashup today. And what they did is they took advantage of Winston, and they were able to get 3 turnovers, 5 sacks, and just, make a mess of that entire Browns offense.
Yeah, in general, the defense had a hell of a day. Everyone stepped up and contributed on the defensive line. The only call out I will make there is Joey Bosa seems to really be dealing with it. He was limping around virtually all game, was pretty much ineffective. I think he got one really good pressure where I think he was held and there wasn't a flag thrown. But other than that, everyone else showed up. From the defensive line to the second level, I want to give a shout out to Deion Henley, because I think in some ways he's become somewhat of an unsung hero. In the first 2 weeks, you heard his name a ton. In the last few, not so much. Today, I saw improvement from him everywhere, specifically in coverage and zone. He's getting much better depth. In weeks prior, you were watching him play too close to the line of scrimmage and biting on play actions, and then passing, not getting proper alignment and depth. And so a lot of balls were getting to the second level behind him in like these huge cavernous windows. But now he's finding ways to get depth, play off the QB's eyes, and he almost baited Jameis Winston into a pick today. He laid out for it and just couldn't corral it. But the coverage is there. He's always been a solid tackler, but you're now watching him get downhill and be disruptive for tackles for loss. He's not just catching guys at the second level and going for rides or just stopping them there. He's starting to be a playmaker in the backfield also. So definitely want to give him props. We already talked about Elijah Molden, Tar Heap still. Derwin had some stuff going his way a little bit today. I want to watch Derwin a little bit closer because I don't think he's been nearly as effective in the last few weeks. It concerns me a bit, but we're just kind of nitpicking at this point. Overall, the defense is collectively playing lights out, elite ball. And I don't care what anyone says about the level of competition they're playing against. They can only play who is on the schedule. And they're not allowing guys to they're not playing down to the level of competition on defense. They go out there with the same mindset every week, and they're whipping people every week. So hats off to the defense. And again, if the offense can get to a point to where they're matching that level of intensity, this team's going to be much better in the back half of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, that almost interception for Henley was pretty beautiful, and he was so upset with himself.
Yeah.
I don't love football players slamming their fists in the ground as hard and vigorously as he did, but I understand he was upset. But his play for me was really good. But he had just a beautiful run stop right before the half for a tackle for a loss, which was my favorite play from him. But you can see him attacking line of scrimmage in the run game, getting good enough depth in coverage, and then now being able to read the eyes of the quarterback and to just bite on everything and go after everything and almost get the pick today. He was very good. I want to say he had another deflection other than that one, but he was really good today. Deion Henley was really good. We saw Troy Dye flash even on that fourth down stop. He had a big hit on Tillman. He did pretty good in some like late game work where they were kind of subbing in some guys. Joey Bosa did have one play where he got to Winston on a third down low that forced him to get rid of the ball fast. But I mean, he feels like he's at 50% right now. Like he's not even close to having the motor that we're used to having from Bosa. And it feels like he's now just a decoy, which, for what it's worth, it worked today because they got a lot of pressure on the quarterback. The pursuit from Thule today was unbelievable. Just felt like his motor was cranked to 11 today. He really came out the gates firing. 2.5 sacks in the backfield, chasing down run plays. Mac was too. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Mac had a cramp and nothing serious for him at the end of the game. But I mean, all those guys up front just had a hell of a game. And Morgan Fox, another guy from the interior, getting a hell of a pass rush going today too.
Yeah, absolutely. Morgan Fox had a hell of a game. Some timely sacks. I think the second one that he had was a coverage sack, but it was still all effort. He basically allowed himself he's kind of almost spying while rushing upfield and didn't allow Winston to get beyond him and got the sack before he was able to cross the line of scrimmage or escape for additional yards. So Morgan Fox is one of those sneaky, timely playmakers. You don't see him get the credit that maybe he deserves also, but as far as being a true kind of pass rusher on the interior, he may not have the best athleticism, not the biggest guy in the world, but he seems to come up with plays when you're not even thinking about him. So I have nothing negative to say about that whatsoever. He definitely played his behind off as well.
Yeah, very opportunistic today, getting a bunch of turnovers, getting after the quarterback is a thing that, again, has been kind of a sticking point for this defense. They've been doing everything right, but that pass rush who we thought we had really high hopes for wasn't getting after the quarterback today. They absolutely were. So shout out to the defense and even some contributors late like Troy Dye getting in there and getting some work.
Yeah, for certain.
And then and then also like defensively, Browns were like 1 of 7 on third down in the first half. I mean, they were able to just, whenever they needed a big stop, it felt like they came up pretty big. Towards the second half, they put on a softer cushion, let some things go, and kind of were just letting the clock tick, kind of like how they were doing against Denver, which people were kind of upset about, letting them come into that game a little bit later. But this was just a game they felt like they had in hand and didn't, and kind of took the foot off the gas a little bit towards the end of that game.
Yeah, for certain. I have a comment that I want to speak to here. So Zap full on the hill. I'm not sure if you're new here, but we are fair and balanced. So regardless as to whether the team win or loses, we're happy in the win, but we don't ignore the things that aren't good because typically, specifically good teams will find the bad and look to address those things as well. They don't just ignore them. We are excited about the win. Please don't be confused, but also know that we cover all of it, not just the happy, rosy sounding parts. So I don't know again if you're new here, but welcome regardless.
Yeah, and there are a lot of new people, so welcome, whether you are or aren't. And then I just saw a tweet from Joe Reedy before we got in here about a stat for this game. The Chargers are the sixth team since 1990 and the first since the Patriots in 2019 to allow 20 or fewer points in their first 8 games of the season. So again, under 20 and doing it again.
Can you beg your twin not to leave? Like, what can you do?
My twin
Like,
brother?
I thought personally, I feel like it's your responsibility to ensure that he doesn't leave the team. I'm putting it on you. So
Yes.
you got to come up with some ideas. We'll
I'll
talk
talk to
through
him.
them. Yeah.
I'll
We
talk to my
can,
brother.
yeah, let's get a think tank going and then come back and let us know what the results are. But he can't leave. This team has found a gem in this defensive coordinator, and there are going to be teams that are after him, and hopefully he loves LA and Jim Harbaugh enough to stick around for a bit longer.
Yeah, I sure hope so. He also, did you see Joe Reedy's stat earlier in the game too about the passer rating when getting sacked? It was by the way, and we'll get to offensive line, but it feels they got sacked 6 times in the first half. I don't think he got sacked in the second half, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, the stat was Justin Herbert is the first quarterback to have a perfect passer rating of 158.3 in the first half when being sacked at least 6 times.
No, you're right. There were no sacks in the second half. All of them came in the first. Wow.
Yeah, crazy. The second half adjustments we were talking about, but we haven't really talked about the offensive line.
No, it's been so awesome defensively. We've been on for half an hour almost and not broached the offense. That's how great this defensive performance was.
Mm-hmm. So offensively, we saw a lot of good things, some bad, but what was your kind of overall take today from offensively?
So it was weird because when you look at everything in totality, you can mark it down to about 2 or 3 busted plays on the Browns' part where they gave up 2 huge touchdown plays. But with that being said, overall, I still think Greg Roman's starting to understand that this team is only going to go as far as Ten's arm takes them. And with that being said, when the running game's not going, he's trying to get it established by first starting with the passing game. And then also when he gets himself into, say, for instance, a second and long situation or third and long, he's not just aiming to get first downs or get closer to the sticks for like a third and manageable play. He's going up top. And I think he's catching defenses flat-footed because they know that by this team's conservative nature, they're probably not looking for explosives. They're just looking for these drives that can basically break the defense down and eventually end up in points. But Herbert's going for the gusto on these second and third and longs, and teams are screwing the pooch because of it. There were at least 2 occasions, I think, on both busted plays. I know for certain on the first that looked like cover 2. And the safety was late on help. The second one looked like it may have been cover 3 just because of the inside corner. I think it might have been a slot who played the flat, and the outside corner didn't follow QJ deep. And so that might have been cover 3. Have to look back at it at all 22. But Herbert's being opportunistic and finding the busts in the plays and making huge plays. He's also, to me, exercised those cover 2 demons because that used to be a real problem for him in his earlier years. He seemed to have figured that puzzle out. I like the fact that Greg Roman is not banging his head against the wall with just consistent run after run after run, putting the team behind the sticks and allowing Herbert to go out there and sling the ball around and operating the run off of that. It wasn't always pretty. They definitely slowed down in the second half. I'm not sure if they were just looking to, I guess, play it safe because they felt like they had a safer lead. But against teams that are really good and can put up points, you can't have that many 3 and outs and short drives that don't take up a lot of time off of the clock and expect your defense to be able to play the way that they did today against them. So hopefully they get that figured out moving forward. But overall, I do think the offense is starting to evolve, and the more healthy bodies they get back, the better they'll be for it. Quentin Johnston had a tremendous game today. He should have had a 3rd touchdown. He absolutely should have had a third touchdown. I don't know if Justin Herbert got that ball off a little quicker than what he was expecting, but he definitely didn't get his head around
Mhm.
fast enough. But it's great to see because there's market improvement from QJ from year over year. I mean, we have to be honest about it and truthful. And no, we don't hate QJ here. I know that's the running joke, but again, we call it like we see it. He was not very good last year. This year, different guy altogether, playing with much more confidence. I know that he was out for a few games, but comes back in this game and makes a difference. QJ and Ladd together are a headache for teams because they're starting to use QJ vertically, which isn't necessarily his strength, but you have to respect it. And Ladd's getting more open in the middle of the field on those crossers, dig routes. He's able to sit down in the middle of the field. This is what happens when you have multiple weapons that are viable threats. So I don't necessarily know that they're going to go after a wide receiver. I do still feel like they need a tight end, but as a whole, the offense is evolving, and it's not just caveman run game no matter what. It's running off of what 10 produces in the passing game first. And you're still going to get balance. Your running game's still going to be able to make it go. It just has to work in reverse a little bit here because you have a quarterback that has top 3 talent, should I say.
Yeah, there's a it was interesting to see because we saw 33 dropbacks, I believe, and then it was like 20 runs, including the little end around to QJ. But for Dobbins to have 14 carries today, hit 85 yards and 2 touchdowns, that's an effective running back. It's exactly what you want from your running game, and it's almost going against what Greg Roman wants. He wants to run it 85 times for 14 yards. It feels like he wants the opposite. But to be able to get that out of J.K. Dobbins while still airing it out, and then Herbert's thrown for over 280, gets 2 touchdowns. Quentin Johnston has over 100 yards today. Ladd McConkey was the intermediate monster today, getting like 5 for 64. He had like 7 targets. It's a nice kind of baseline for this offense and what you could see going forward. And it feels like to me that Greg Roman's getting more comfortable in his offense and what he has than what he was able to depend on in the first couple of weeks. Because in the first couple of weeks, J.K. Dobbins was going ham. Like he was getting over 100 yards. He was almost going like 150 a clip to start the season. But then, run defense started to kind of clamp down a little bit and tighten up their run defense, and they are not able to do that so much. So now he's able to rely on Herbert a little bit more. We've seen it for 2 weeks straight where they're relying on Herbert doing it and letting the pass game open up the run game. And there was a beautiful kind of feel for the game moment for Greg Roman when Herbert hits Quentin Johnston for a pretty big gainer on a 3rd down. They get a 1st down, and as they're driving, it feels like they're going to run it again. Browns expect them to run. They stack the box. It's a beautiful play action to Ladd McConkey, moves the sticks even further, and then they cap it off with a TD run by J.K. Dobbins. It was a nice little wrinkle, and it feels like some improvement from Greg Roman, knowing that, they're expecting it to run. I'm expecting it for them to run. I'm sure everybody in the chat and Craig always expected them to run the ball after that, slow down the clock a little bit, go back to the Greg Roman offense. And then they go play action, fool everybody in the building, and they get Ladd over the middle for a pretty big gainer. So I loved the way in which they did it. And then they capped off the game by just running it down their throat. And so it did at the end end up being a Harbaugh type Roman type game, but it all happened because Herbert was wheeling and dealing. They got 2 big completions, 2 big long touchdowns from Palmer and Johnston. Ladd McConkey was getting open in the middle of the field, and you saw, Palmer streaking down the field and Johnston getting open in the middle too. That now they had to respect the pass, and then it opened up the run game. So it went a little bit different than Roman normally likes to do, where he likes to pound the rock and then open up the pass game through that. But now I feel like Roman's getting a little bit better in understanding that they're going to win on Herbert's arm. And that's just going to happen from here on out.
Well, yeah, they're getting a little bit of everything they want now. It just comes in different ways and different waves. So instead of being a dominant run game throughout the course of the game, they're being able to wear on teams throughout the game here and there, and then put the game away on chunk run plays. Not talking about like 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They're busting like 30, 40 plus yard runs and putting games away. And I'm sure Jim and Roman love every second of that. But I also want to salute Roman on something else. I watched this man adjust in game, and this might have been something that he realized throughout the week about that defense. He ID'd that the Browns played a significant amount of man-to-man coverage, and so you saw him kind of combat that with like man beaters out of bunch sets. And so I'm watching someone evolve as a play caller. This is what it means to be an offensive coordinator, identifying not necessarily weaknesses, but even if it's something that a team likes to do, and being able to attack it anyway. Because if you can beat a team at what they want to do, then you have a very real advantage against them. They thought they could line up against the Chargers wide receivers because they probably don't respect them very much, and they got burnt a couple times by it. And then you saw them in confusion when attempting to play zone. They played so much man that they had to kind of shift because it wasn't fully effective early, and they went to zone coverages. And you can tell it's not where they're accustomed to living, so that caused a bunch of the bust that resulted in those big plays. So Greg Roman is, he's got some help there. Let's not forget Mark Trestman's there and his offensive mind. Forgetting Buddy's name, that's the passing game coordinator. I can see his
Shane
face.
Day?
No. It's quarterback's coach. I can't. He was the old Colts OC for a bit, and now I can see his face. I cannot remember his name. Anyway, you too.
We're talking about the passing game coordinator?
Passing game coordinator.
Oh, Marcus Brady?
Marcus Brady. So those two guys are a little bit more adept at managing a passing game, and I'm sure that they're all collabing and having a bit of a think tank with Roman about how to attack these defenses, and you're seeing it manifest on the field. Today was just a prime example of it.
So there was somebody in the chat, and I'm sure you can hit us up because they asked, but what we saw Slater struggle early against Myles Garrett. We saw Alt have some struggles, even got a holding penalty today. What has been your assessment so far of, well, at least in this game, of the tackles? We've been talking about how great these two have been. We saw, I guess, little blemishes today early on in that game. But as the game went on, just as a whole, how did you feel these two did?
It was a pretty up and down game overall. It's kind of a tale of two halves. In the second half, I think they played much better. Joe Alt seems like he had a bit of a hiccup game here. Besides like the holding call, I did see him get out leveraged a few times to the outside and beat across his face also on a couple of occasions. This might be probably one of his worst performances of the year, if not the worst one so far. Slater settled down there into the second half. But, look, man, we're talking about Myles Garrett here. And of all the pass rushes that they faced this year and really across the NFL, he's the most athletic specimen when it comes to size, speed, and strength that you're going to face. TJ Watt is tremendous, probably the best pure pass rusher in NFL. But with that being said, no one is the type of athletic, I'm talking about Myles Garrett here, freak. Let's clarify that. Myles Garrett in the NFL, he's got to be number one. So he's going to give anyone a rough day. And it looks like he's kind of starting to round into form, as I believe he was working through some injuries here in the early part of the season. But I don't really have any complaints overall. I just think you can't expect both of these guys to be perfect every week. And when you're playing against guys the caliber of Myles Garrett, you're going to have some instances where it doesn't look great. But I would say if I had to give it a grade collectively between the two of them, I'd say it was like a C+, B- game.
Yeah, I felt like there was a bad drive from Rashawn Slater where he gave up those back-to-back sacks to Myles Garrett. I felt like there was maybe, and this is just from watching live, but there was maybe 2 or 3 drives where I felt like, there was a sack on Alt, there was a holding penalty, but not particularly clean as he's been in the past from Alt. But for the most part, it feels like they did a pretty damn good job. All the pressures came from the inside. Dalvin Tomlinson had a sack. I'm pretty sure. Trying to think of the other. Shelby Harris had a sack. The linebacker Devin Bush got a sack coming up. Like it did not feel like there was that much. Even though Garrett had 3 sacks, which is crazy, it came in a spurt in the first quarter, and then it just dissipated. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. The fact that they were able to clamp down on Myles Garrett, rotate better, they had a much better plan of attack in that second half for Myles Garrett. And, it just felt like once they knew that Garrett was a freak, hashtag Garrett was a freak, they decided to hand it over and let that and kind of contain him a little bit better. And they did an excellent job of doing that throughout the game. So I understand that, they're not going to get a perfect grade like they have on PFF, like everybody's been tweeting out for the past couple of weeks, which some people take stock and I don't, but it wasn't perfect, but it did feel like a pretty strong game from a pretty good pass rushing attack from the Browns. So I think because we've talked about offense and defense, we should probably start talking about special teams. So we saw Darius Davis break one for a huge gain on his first punt return. We saw Tier Tart get a blocked kick, which basically like hit him in the neck or in the shoulder pad, but got the block. But most importantly, we got Cameron Dicker, who missed another extra point, and then he also missed a 44-yard field goal today.
His first miss in under 50 yards in his 2-year or almost 2-year career. So the streak is broken. So last week, I mentioned this in the Discord during the Saints game. I was watching him warm up during halftime, and he was pulling everything to the left. And it seemed to carry over into today because it's the same way that he missed that 40-plus yarder. And I don't remember which direction the extra point was. I looked away for a second. One of my kids was asking me a question, so I missed which direction he missed that in. But everything was pulling to the left, and it carried over into this week. I'm not sure what's going on with him, but it's not what we expect from a guy of this caliber. He's been way too consistent. I'm sure he'll work his way through it, but nothing's more demoralizing than going out there scoring points and then missing the extra point because you just kind of expect it. And again, this is one of those instances where you think about playing good teams and how missing things like that, just those little things that can come back and haunt you. And in Chargers history, they typically do. I haven't necessarily come back to bite them in the butt quite yet, but you have to get that tied up. Darius Davis did for the first time this year. I want to say, I don't remember what the longest return was before today's, but this was like one of the first times after a return that you saw the Chargers playing in plus territory because they're typically starting on average what feels like inside their own 10, and they have to drive the full length of the field. So this is what it looks like when you can get your return game firing on all cylinders. So I know that he was dealing with a little bit of a hamstring thing. I saw him go out once and Ladd was in for a return. So I'm not sure if he's still trying to or they're still trying to manage that. But if he can get back to his rookie form, then that's just another weapon that you have on the special teams. But beyond that, Nick Neiman is a godsend. And again, someone who doesn't get enough credit for these special teams tackles that he makes. He almost never gets outflanked. He breaks down, tackles guys when they're in front of them, and literally eliminates big plays from happening. And it happens almost every return. You see it if a guy can get around whoever the initial, maybe it's like the initial gunner or someone gets upfield in the middle and they break to the outside. Nick Neiman's either running it down from the backside or he's there as coverage if the guy breaks the initial tackle. So someone else that this team needs to make a priority, and I think that they do, and you want to keep him around because he feels like one of those Chargers lifers who needs to be a special teams contributor that they don't let go. So I want to make sure that he gets his props because I don't feel like he does well enough, in my opinion.
Yes, an important key piece of that special teams. And it feels like Chargers defense always put on the clamps right before the 50, which makes the punter an easy kick to kick inside the 10, and then the Chargers start somewhere inside the 10. Also, on a side note, have the Chargers won a coin toss? I said it at the beginning of the game. Have they won a coin toss? It feels like the other team has always won and deferred, and the Chargers always start with the ball. That just feels like a common theme to start the game. And then also, speaking of special teams, Semi Fehoko goes down on special teams, holding his arm. It looks not good. I don't think we've heard anything about it yet, but that injury looks bad. And we just saw Brendan Rice get put on IR. So there's going to be an opening in the wide receiver room. We know Chark should be back. He was supposed to be back today, but not quite there yet. Maybe it'll be next week. But it feels like there might be a wide receiver coming around the bend very soon, or at least somebody to add to the wide receiver group or the special teams group. One of them.
Yep, right there with you.
Yeah. And then also another side note with J.K. Dobbins, 2 touchdowns today. It was over 600 yards on the season now, which means he like activated a big bonus today, getting 150,000 for his efforts. He had a bunch of escalators in his contract that would click on once he met certain benchmarks because of the injury history. All good, healthy so far, and making some extra money. So
Yeah.
good on J.K.
Happy
Dobbins.
for him. Happy he's been able to stay healthy. It was a career marred in injury up until this point, but he's been, considering what he's come from, he's been a stellar performer for the Chargers. I know, when you look at box scores every week, he's not necessarily lighting it up, but a lot of that, again, has to come down to the offensive line because some of these runs that J.K. breaks off, he's doing a lot of work on his own, specifically when having to navigate through the interior of that offensive
Oh my
line. So
gosh.
they should give him a bonus just for having to deal with that every week.
Yeah, because he's almost always getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. But luckily for us as Charger fans, we get to see him break that first and second tackle and make it a gain at some point. All right, so we're wrapping up here. So if you guys got questions, which I'm sure you've got a ton of them, especially with the trade deadline on Tuesday, send them in, and we will answer your questions now. The first one here. How many first-round picks for Garrett? I'm untouchable.
I'm gonna say we're not trading Sisty. That's not an option. No trade clause.
That's a franchise player.
Yeah, correct.
But Myles Garrett's never getting traded. That ain't happening.
And I'm not sure where the Browns stand going into next season from a cap standpoint. Well, no. Nah, they have to pay their quarterback that they guarantee the contract to. Yep. That's ridiculous. Every time
that's the kind of contract I'm looking for.
I keep forgetting. Yeah. If you're gonna give Garrett that, then you might not have a choice. But overall, I don't think they're getting rid of Garrett because I get stripping the team down because they have to rebuild it because you have to pay Watson that guaranteed money, so you're gonna have to make some maneuvers. But I don't think they're gonna trade both of their pass rushers. They'll probably get rid of the other, whose name is escaping me right now. But I don't see them letting Garrett go.
We're talking about Zadarius Smith?
Zadarius Smith. I think Zadarius Smith gets traded here before Tuesday, probably to the Lions.
Yeah, they've been talking about that. Here's one from Rodney. We got this on Twitter too, Craig. What about Brandon Scherf from the Jaguars, interior offensive lineman?
My issue with Scherf is that he's on the wrong side of 30 and he has a pretty extensive injury history. And this feels like one of those moves that you would make if you were a team in contention and you feel like you just need a piece to basically fill a hole for like a year. And then you'd be hoping he can stay healthy. Still a pretty decently high level performer when on the field. It's just keeping him on the field and the fact that, like, what are you going to do with him after this year? He's 32 years old. So I wouldn't be in for that. It feels like, again, one of those top of, those division moves for teams who are looking to solidify a spot on a run to the playoffs.
I mean, while it would be, it would help the roster for sure. It'd be an upgrade to what they have, but I just don't know that they would be willing to do that. And also, I don't know, it's a 1-year rental at this point too.
Yeah, and I mentioned that it feels like they're trying to do like the functional rebuild / retool. So they want guys that are going to stick around for a few years if they make a move for them, someone that they probably extend. I don't see you getting, a 32-year-old guard and trying to extend him out 2 to 3 years. It doesn't really make sense to me, especially one with injury history.
Yeah, and I think he's 33, which is the same. But it's
there you go.
Add another year, and it's he might as well
gets uglier by the second.
AARP at this point. Okay, well, yeah. So fine, but again, like we had mentioned on, I think we mentioned on Roundtable, there were some names, and I don't want to go through all the names again, but there were some names that they liked. And one of which was a running back that was in there last year, the contract before he signed a new deal. And they were planning on signing that running back to an extension to keep him long-term. So if they were to make a trade, it would be like, like Craig is talking about, somebody that they're going to be able to have control over for a couple more years, not a guy they would have for, the rest of the season and then basically kick him out after that. So while I understand it makes sense because the Jags are bad and Scherf is pretty good, but he's old and he is not going to be on this roster in 2025, and they're not a Brandon Scherf away from, a Super Bowl run. So I would say no
Mm-hmm.
on that.
Yep, for certain.
Okay. We just answered that. Okay. Important question from Fab. Who's got it better than us? The Chiefs? Oh, nobody.
Garrett.
Nobody. Sorry.
Come on, Garrett.
I had to. It was funny.
Yeah. Sorry, Fab.
But nobody. Fab, nobody. Steve P. Any chance for a trade for Marshawn Lattimore?
Funny enough, I wouldn't take that off of the table, but I would actually be looking at a team like the Bengals to make that move, to be completely honest with you. I saw that they were looking at, I want to say corner is one of the positions that they want to make a move on before Tuesday. And the Saints are going to have to be in fire sale mode. They may be willing to offer more for him than potentially what the Chargers would be giving up. So we'll see. I don't count it out. I really don't. And I would love to have Marshawn Lattimore again, but he's another one of those guys. I think Lattimore might be like 28, 29. So he's not ancient. He has some good years left in him, but that's one of those lockdown corners that would be tremendous to have on your team. But the question now is like, do you really feel like you need that based on how these younger guys have been performing? And you're taking on, I'm not sure what the contract is right now, how long you would be looking to extend them. Again, it would be, taking a strength and improving upon it. But I don't know that with the way this defense is performing is necessarily needed. Now, when they start playing this tougher slate of offensive opponents, having a guy like that would be perfect. So I'm not taking it off the table.
So I'm just looking at Lattimore's contract here. He is 28 this year. He signed until 2026. He's making $9 million next year and then $7 million the following year.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Scratch that. I am off on that. That's your base salary. He's making 31 and 28 next 2 seasons. So it climbs significantly with a potential out in 2025. Sorry, this stupid window wasn't moving. So you got a potential out after this season, but if you don't pick it up, it's 31 and 28 for the next 2 years. So I do not see that. And yeah, do you really feel like you need it? And I don't think they do. Glenn Gordo, who gets the game balls? Tarheeb still for sure.
Bang. Tarheeb still, and I would say Morgan Fox.
Or
that's both on defense. I mean, the defense, take your pick.
Yeah. Thule had 2.5 sacks today. I think he deserves one. Tarheeb still is the obvious one. Maybe give one to Dobbins for the 2 TDs scored today.
QJ
and Palmer.
Career day.
And here's the thing about game balls and Harbaugh is he gives too many out. And it's starting to annoy me a little bit. He'll be like, "Oh, game ball," and he's handing them out like he's Oprah, and he's handing all these things out.
It's like Halloween candy.
Yeah, you can't give out 8 to 10 game balls because then it loses its significance. So if everybody gets a game ball, including the guy,
today, I think it would be warranted though. Maybe today.
If you give it okay.
There are a lot of a lot of specific standout performance today.
It's every week. They gave the guy who found Elijah Molden. Like they didn't even get they have Elijah Molden and then the guy who helped orchestrate the trade for Elijah Molden on game.
That was a lot. I agree.
Yeah. I'm gonna get a game ball just for looking like Jesse Minter today.
Okay, every week. So we owe you a few then, don't we?
I guess.
Put in your request.
All right. Zach Elkins, is Deion Henley exceeding expectations this year? Absolutely. When you talk about a guy who couldn't see the field last year because of this ridiculous regime, to come out and be arguably the best linebacker on this team now, I don't know if there's much of an argument now. I mean, it felt like Perryman and Henley were kind of going back and forth, trading blows for best linebacker on this team, but it just feels like Henley's now just exceeding every expectation and becoming a pretty good NFL linebacker so far.
Man, send Brandon Staley to do his downward dog thrust in Abu Dhabi somewhere. I never want to see that dude's face ever again. How do you let talent like this just rot? I know that he was injured a little bit last year, but you can see all the tools. Like we saw him flash. You could see it. You could see the actual ability. You saw it during the draft cycle. We were excited about the pick. We just kept asking why he couldn't get on the field. But you got two sprains out there every week, stinking it up now with Tennessee Titans, and apparently he sucks there too. So I don't get it. That's Kenneth Murray, by the way, two sprains. Not everybody's in the Discord, so I have to remember that. I don't know, man. Like exceeding expectations. Yeah, I guess because you didn't expect him to play to this level quite so soon, being that he didn't get hardly any burn last year. But I'm not shocked that he's a good player because when he got on the field, he looked like a good freaking player. It was just so few and far in between last year. But again, Brandon Staley just disappear somewhere, never come back.
And you know what's even more kind of frustrating to add to this situation is they had in that draft class, they had Trenton Simpson as their LB1. And rather than going with their board, Staley pounds the table for Deion Henley and goes, you know what? I want this guy. This is a guy I believe in. Let the rankings be damned. Give me Henley. They gave him Henley, and he did not play Henley. And now here comes Henley succeeding when he's gone.
It's perfect. It's actually poetic justice, if you ask me. Just further proof that the guy was terrible. And for some reason, he keeps finding his way into NFL organizations. Now he's the Niners' problem, and he's probably the reason why that stink is on them right now. And they're dealing with all these injuries and weird losses. Yeah, you wanted them, you got them, and everything that comes with them.
Yeah. All right. Next from Nathan Riviera. What are the chances of them actually trading for Jeffrey Simmons? Doesn't seem like the Titans aren't going to be content. Basically, the Titans aren't going to be content. That's a double negative, Nathan, but it's okay. This is not English class. They won't be contending anytime soon. That's for sure. Will Levis has not worked out, and they'll be looking for a quarterback in this year's draft, and they'll be playing to get a better draft pick from here on out, basically. So what are the chances? I mean, I don't know. They checked in on him, and the Titans were open to the idea, but I don't know that they're seriously going to let him go. They're just talking. They're just doing preliminary talks at the moment. So I don't have an answer for you on a percentage.
I don't know what to think about the Titans because as long as they keep trotting out the male monarch, they're more than likely showing themselves. I mean, they are every week that they're not a serious team. So if you want to offload that contract, you drafted a defensive tackle that you assume would be, the guy moving forward. And Tavon Sweat, I'm probably getting the first name wrong. Last name Sweat. I remember Sweat.
Tavondre.
Tavondre. Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
Right.
It's possible. Probability. It just depends on if they're looking to offload some of these deals. I would love it as a Chargers fan. Absolutely. Give it. I mean, we've been asking for interior disruption for years. He provides all of that. Even though you're getting production on the interior, this just helps to fortify it. And like I said, if you have a strength, why not improve it? And no better way to do that than to get us like our own Chris Jones, dare I say.
Yeah. It does not feel like they won today, though, right? Didn't they win in overtime?
I thought I saw
and screwed up their draft pick already.
Let me see.
I think, but anyway, regardless, I think they won on a field goal. I might be wrong on that, but they just drafted Tavondre. Okay, yeah, so they just drafted Tavondre Sweat. Jeffrey Simmons, getting older, is got a bunch of money owed to him pretty soon here. And the Chargers have a bunch of money that they could take on if they wanted to. So it makes sense. And if you really want to propel this defense, adding a Jeffrey Simmons on the inside would absolutely do that. So I would love it. But we'll kind of see if they feel like Jeffrey's. I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking at this point, whether they feel like they have to go out and make a move to compete and they want to move up and compete with those upper echelon teams like we talked about. Is Jeffrey Simmons the move? Or do you need to get your tight end, which feels like the more practical move? Do you invest in the defense? It all depends, but they're definitely thinking about all sides.
Well, here's the beauty of having cap space next year and extra draft picks. It gives you the opportunity to make some moves and maybe go big fish hunting with a guy like Simmons and not feel like you're selling the farm in order to do it. But If there's a way to walk away with both, then I'm a happy camper come Tuesday. But if you're telling me you can get someone who could be a menace in your interior defensive line, it, like I mentioned before, makes life a whole lot easier for your secondary, even if guys are reeling from injury. It just improves that pass rush overall, which means guys have to cover less time on the back end. So I think it would actually be a smart move because of all the other pieces it affects. So you're not necessarily just paying for one position and hoping that position gives you production just at that spot. It improves the entirety of the defense as a whole because it's a trench game. So get a premier trench player.
Yes. From QJ, and we'll just take a couple more and then we'll get off here. QJ?
What about him?
QJ. I don't know.
Yeah.
QJ. That's the answer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, maybe for a game ball, maybe.
Oh,
maybe,
I thought I said that he did.
Up.
I thought I did say he got one.
Yeah, you added him. Okay.
Yeah.
Will there be a trade deadline podcast if they make any moves? Yes, there absolutely will be if they do.
If I have to run home from work somehow
to do it.
Yeah, well, I probably shouldn't have said that. No, I will be at work doing my job to the best of my ability, and I will not cut out for a podcast because I'm a responsible adult and would never do such a thing. So that
Glenn Gordo, he doesn't even hand out game balls. That's the other thing too. Is that Harbaugh will just say you get a game ball and won't give them a physical ball? Like they won't have all the because they don't have.
Well, yeah. Do they have that many
balls? No, they don't have those laying around. He just goes, "You get one." It's like crazy. Anyway.
But then also they don't use that many in the game.
Yes.
So
Popper just said that Mac said he should be good to go next week. Cool.
Awesome.
Good to hear. All right. Perfect. Perfect way to end it too. Would you add Hunter Henry to your list of tight end trade targets? We have mentioned him in the past.
He's on my list. Still behind David Njoku and probably Evan Ingram, but I'm not opposed to it at all. You probably don't have to give up a ton to get him either. And the Patriots are definitely going to be sellers. And sure, reunite him with Herbert, even though I still hold it against him that he said he wanted to go somewhere with a good quarterback to play with. And it didn't happen since he left the Chargers. So
he deserves that. Yes.
Yeah. Every bit of it. The hell you've been living in is one you created for yourself, sir.
Yes. All right, cool. Appreciate it. And yes, obviously we've talked about Hunter Henry and we would definitely add him to the list, but yes, I think he's a third behind Ingram or Njoku.
Wait, hold up. What about this question? I'm sorry. This is funny to me. Any advice to Daniel Popper for getting Harbaugh to answer questions?
It doesn't ever feel like he asks nicely. It always feels like he's trying. There's like some kind of motive behind it. So it never feels like I feel like if you're just nice to Harbaugh, he'll answer anything, most likely. But it doesn't feel like he's got the same approach. He always comes kind of with a little bit of an attitude every time he's asking. He's kind of like trying to get him all the time.
Yeah, it's all gotcha questions. But let's also stop asking him to give his game plans away the week before games. Let's start there. I think that'd be a good idea. Asking about how guys are going to be used, what you think their snap counts are going to be. Yeah, let's just tell the opposition how we plan on using guys. Make their jobs a lot easier for them. That would be my recommendation. Find a way to not ask any more of those questions.
Yeah. It feels like the questions that Harbaugh gets mad at are the ones that he probably shouldn't be answering anyway, and Popper knows that he shouldn't be asking because he's not going to get a good answer from him. So it feels like if you're in the business of asking a question and getting an answer that you can write a report on or like find something interesting about the team or any other angle than just hey, like what can you tell me about things that you can't answer? It doesn't work that way. And he knows that.
I mean, hey, you should be asking the tough questions. I completely get it. Like the one that he asked about the level of the defensive play and the opposition that they've gone against not being the best. I think that's a valid question to ask. He's also not going to tell you that he thinks those teams suck. So if that's the type of answer you were looking for, then nah, it's not the route that Harbaugh's ever going to go. Just avoid, like you mentioned, asking him questions that you know he can't give answers to. And as a reporter for the team, why would you want that?
Yeah. And also, he's always been a little smug with coaches, especially when they know they're on the hot seat and stuff. Remember Staley towards the end of his tenure? I mean, it was like torture, man. He was like, there was no need for all that. But anyway.
Well, when you got your pitchforks out for some of these guys, at that point, it's kind of fun. I ain't gonna lie. Like when you know guys were out there, and sorry, I don't hate anyone. The disdain I had for Staley by the end, I was fine with him lighting into him every week because I just like to watch him up there squirm.
Yeah. True. Yes. All right. Cool. Well, I think we are good now. Do we anything else you want to add before we get off here?
No, who's next week? Who's up
Titans.
next? Titans. Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Nothing. Just that they could get on a nice little run here, and I really expect the move to be made by Tuesday. And if it's a tight end, you guys might see me do something out of pocket. Nothing that will get me arrested, but
Oh,
I don't know,
what
man.
the hell is going on? I really hope they make a move now. I don't know what you're talking about, but I want to see whatever the hell is going to happen.
Yeah, I just have to
So
also
if they-
mind myself because family watches this, and it
So
can get
what?
tricky.
All right, I got to figure out what the hell this is going to be. So I sure hope they sign a tight end.
Now, not just any tight
Ah,
end. It would have to
damn
be,
it, damn it.
no stipulations.
come
No,
on.
you're not backing me into that corner.
Come
It would have to
on.
be like an Njoku. No, only if it's David Njoku. Only because that's the one that I want. So it would have to be David Njoku. If it's anyone else, I'm not.
Not Evan Ingram, not Hunter Henry, nobody, huh?
Nope. Would
It
have
has
to be
to be
exactly
Njoku?
who I want. It's the only way it's going down. I'm putting myself at risk here.
We don't even know what that is.
Me
Craig.
neither, but I'm
But you're promising it here
got to be something.
as we're out. Okay. All right. You heard it here. If Chargers trade for David Njoku, our YouTube channel might get banned after the podcast.
Nah,
we do
man.
for it.
Nah, I ain't going that far.
Oh, well, okay. Well, then I'm not that. Okay, fine. All right.
Look, freak, stop it.
All right, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. Always remember, hashtag Garrett is a freak. A thing that I'm sure will just die down any day now.
In perpetuity.
Watching. Yes.
In perpetuity forever.
Chargers got a huge win today, 27-10 on the road. Not an easy venue in Cleveland, but just took it to the Browns, and it was really over from the start. Great win. Appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you next time.
Salute. And thanks, everybody.
Oh, Jamie.